Hello, how you doing today? Today we're going to talk about how to calculate labor cost in construction. So the first thing you got to realize is if you have crews, people who perform work on your behalf, you're building something, you're a drywall contractor, you've got to install drywall, you got labor, material, equipment, miscellaneous. But labor is the biggest factor that makes the biggest difference in your bottom line. And I always tell people, you're in the labor business. Don't forget that labor is where you make or break your money. When you bid or price a job, the material's pretty good, pretty accurate. You got your takeoff, your lineal feet, your square feet, your cubic yards. It's not going to vary that much. But labor is the big variable, so we really got to focus on labor cost. And whether you call it productivity, production, crew hours, however you want to call it, that's the most important thing. So we've got to take a hard look at our costs. And let's start with our time card. We want to match our time card to match how we bid. So for example, let's say you're doing concrete footings. Are you just going to say concrete footing labor, which is kind of a generic large amount of money per cubic yard or maybe per square foot of slab? But no, let's get more accurate. So we want a time card that says, first of all, I'm going to do layout. Then I'm going to dig footings. Then I'm going to put rebar in them. I might even form them. Then I'm going to put embeds for columns or walls. And then I'm going to pour it, strip it, and clean. Move off. So the point is, there could be more than one phase of each part of your job. So I was a concrete tilt-up contractor. We had footings, slab, walls, erecting the wall panels, and then completing them. So think about it. I had 5 or 6 categories with 5 or 6 or 7 cost codes in each category. And that's how you want to bid to be accurate, because think about it. A square building has less exterior formwork than a long building or like a sidewalk. For the same amount of square foot, you could have 3 times the labor to install the formwork for a sidewalk than a slab. So think about that as you set up your time cards and your job cost tracking system. Okay, so every day we want to know how many hours we spent on each cost code by every guy on your team or every person in your crew. And so at the end of the week, we know how many hours we spent on each cost code item. Then if we're half done, hopefully we've only spent half the hours. If we're over budget at halfway, we got to sit down with a foreman and really talk about what's it going to take to improve and get back on budget, right? So that's what I call a labor production scorecard. And we're going to talk about production in another video today or whenever you get around to watching it. But that's the point. We need to know what our labor production rate is, and we need to know what our cost is. So let's start with our cost. We take a labor, I don't care what he makes. Let's say he makes 40 bucks an hour, 30 bucks, 20 bucks, I don't care. But so let's just say 20 or 10 or 40. Let's just use 40. So on top of $40, what's it really cost you? His paycheck says the foreman or the supervisor, whoever it is, lead carpenter, for example, or maybe plumbing journeyman or whatever it might be, makes $40. That's their base pay. On top of that, what do we have? We have taxes, we have SUTA, FUTA, FICA, workers' comp, health insurance. That varies greatly. Maybe dental, maybe life, maybe 401k. It's up to your company. Vacation. Most contractors offer paid vacation 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks a year. So if there's 2,040 hours in a year, 2,040, 52 times 40 is what? 2,080 hours. Let's call it 2,000. You divide the 2 weeks off, and that adds about 4% to the labor cost because they're not working those 2 weeks. So that adds about a 4% extra cost to the labor. So we've got vacation, PTO, personal time off. Sometimes we have paid holidays. There might be 7 paid holidays. So we have to add 7 days, which is about 3 or 4% to the total to cover the cost. So if a guy makes 40 bucks, we're going to add a couple bucks just for vacation time. All right? So then we might want to add union dues if you're in the union. Maybe we have some downtime, some meeting time, maybe some safety training time. We might want to add a little bit. And last but not least, what about overtime? Are you putting overtime in your budget to calculate your labor rate? So if you have an average of 8 hours a week, 2 hours a day, or 1.5 hours a day, or you average 50-hour, 48-hour weeks, that's going to significantly add another 5 to 10% or 20% to your rate. So the $40 plus 20% would be $8. So that just would bring it up to 48. So the average for most contractors, now I say average, it varies. If you're in New York City with all the union dues, the city dues, the this, the that, it's well over $100. You start at 40 or 50 and you end up at 100. But most parts of the Midwest of the United States, where we don't have a lot of city rules and regulations and extra taxes, et cetera, a guy making $40 is going to cost you about a 50% burden rate. So I see generally an open shop non-union contractor with about a 40 to 45% burden rate with health insurance, vacation, and overtime. Now, it can be up to 60 or 70 or even 100. So the first thing we have to do is sit down on our calculator, and I'm going to send you a labor calculation formula sheet that you can fill in and come up with your exact cost of labor per hour. So we're going to build a crew. We're going to have a journeyman, a foreman, a couple of laborers. Maybe you've got a trainee, a beginner, apprentice. So you're going to have a crew. So you build a 5-person crew, a 10-person crew, and you're going to average all those rates, and you're going to come up with a blended average. So let's say we take that $40 average, we bring it all together. It might be about a $250 per hour crew rate, divided by 5, $50, $60, whatever it is per hour. So we're going to come up with a crew rate. That becomes our estimating cost for labor, which is just an average blended rate. Then we're going to create a crew cost, so I know what it costs per day. So I know what my labor is. Add up all the people, divide by the number, that's the number. If you want to add supervision to it, great, or you can just use supervision as a line item in your bid. And we come up with our total labor cost per hour, per day, and then we're going to add our trucks or tools and equipment. And we're going to cover equipment costs in the subsequent video. So think about labor. Labor's the key. How do we get accurate labor costs? So we need to know what things cost. So the hard part is to sit down with your estimator and your bookkeeper and make sure we're all on the same page. We want the cost codes in your P&L to match your job cost codes to match your job cost bid. I see a lot of times where the bookkeeper does not have what? They don't have the burden in there. They don't have the workers' comp. They don't have health insurance in the job cost. So the project manager thinks he made more money, but he really didn't get charged for $10 an hour for the stuff that is not in the job cost. The bookkeeper didn't know how to add it to the job cost. So you got to get a software that'll do that for you, automatically add 30, 40% to your labor rate. Okay? And then we'll have an accurate job cost. So think about your supervision, your overtime, your vacation, your paid holidays, add it all up and come out with an accurate job cost. Then when you finish the job, you've got a complete printout of what every line item cost, how many hours, and you divide by the quantity, cubic yards, lineal foot, and you'll know how many lineal feet per hour your crew should install. All right? So that's the simple way to do it. I'm going to offer you, as a thank you for being here today, I've got a website called contractorprofitcalculator.com, and you're going to get my field equipment burden rate calculator. You're going to get that as part of that package so you can determine your accurate labor rates. All right? Hopefully that helps you today. Also, you'll get an opportunity to download the first chapter of my book, Turn Your Construction Business into a Profit-Making Machine. All right? Thanks again. Go make some money.